Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be talking about Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. This is an adventure book from Wizards of the Coast and is for characters of levels 1 through 12. Now, before I get into this was sent to me by Wizards, so I do want to thank them for sending this product to me so that I can make this video. However, as is always the case with these types of videos, they are not scripting or pre-screening the video or anything along those lines, and the opinions that I express are 100% completely and totally my own. Now, Phandelver and Below is kind of interesting in that I thought it was just a strict follow-up to the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure that came in the original 5th edition D&D starter set. However, that's not quite the case. So when I did my pickup video or my new game stuff video, where I kind of looked at this book a little bit, I was under the assumption that you were going back to certain locations, but that's not really what's happening here. So this starter set in particular, with the Lost Mine of Phandelver, has been out of publication for a little while now because they do have their updated starter set with the blue dragon on it there, and so some of the artwork for characters inspired by the D&D animated series from the 1980s. So a new starter set had come out to replace the original one that we had back in 2014. Because that's, 9 years ago at this point, believe it or not. So with the Lost Mine of Phandelver no longer in print, the Phandelver and Below, the first half of the book is essentially a reprint of the original Lost Mine of Phandelver. However, there's a little bit more to it than that. There's like some new artwork in here that is actually really nice looking. There's also some modifications made to this adventure to set up and foreshadow the events of the last 4 chapters of the book, which is the follow-up and the next sort of series of events that occur in after the Lost Mines of Phandelver. So you do have the original adventure with the same characters, NPCs, locations, motivations, all of that sort of thing. But like I said, there are some changes that have been made that are pretty subtle and pretty minor, and I'll talk about those in a moment here. This video will have some spoilers in it. So if you might be a player playing in this adventure, this campaign, I do ask that you refrain from watching the rest of this video until after you've had the opportunity to go through and complete the adventure. I'll try not to spoil too much, but there's already some things that Wizards themselves have already sort of discussed on their channel in terms of like what you can expect in terms of antagonists and stuff like that. But I will say, having this as a way of putting the Lost Mine of Phandelver back into print and into hardcover form is something that I am 100% for and behind. The Lost Mine of Phandelver is a really interesting scenario where this was the introduction that a lot of people had to D&D for the first time. And even if you were familiar with D&D for a while, a lot of people that got into 5e still played through the Lost Mine of Phandelver as one of their first 5th edition experiences. And I kind of feel like we really haven't had kind of that shared experience en masse the way that we do with the Lost Mine of Phandelver since like back in the days of the Red Box and or the BECME or Basic Expert with the Keep on the Borderlands. Now, I'm not trying to say that Lost Mine and Keep on the Borderlands are, equal or comparable or anything like that, but it is a situation where they are the introduction for a lot of people. And I've talked to a lot of people that got into tabletop RPGs with 5th edition, and they went through the mines, and they really enjoyed that adventure. It was an adventure that I really came around on, because when this starter set first came out, I was not a fan. I was not a fan of it at all, but I eventually kind of warmed up to it, and running the Lost Mine of Phandelver is what kind of changed my mind there. So I really do love that adventure, and it's great to see that it is back in print. However, if you have already gone through and already run Lost Mine of Phandelver, your group's already played through it, then it is worth noting that the first 4 chapters of the book are going to be essentially the same adventure that we had here before. But like I said, there are some modifications because there's more going on in Phandalin now than just the situation with the lost mine and everything else, because there are a group of unusual goblins operating throughout the region. And throughout the Lost Mine of Phandelver part of the adventure, you do get some foreshadowing. There may be rumors of strange-looking goblins with unusually large heads, going through or using abilities that regular goblins, just never had access to. At one point, the players come across I believe it's the skeletal remains or a corpse of one of these goblins. So it does kind of foreshadow that there is something more going on here, which I do kind of appreciate. So we're not really going to talk about the actual Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure itself. It is what it is. It's great to have it now where you're not using just the pre-gen characters that are included in the starter set, but you're likely going to be making your own and going through it. But the big thing here is, and the thing that I absolutely love about this, and this is the spoiler. So from this point, there will be things that are not like 9 years old that I'm going to be discussing. So the big thing with this adventure is that once everything's been completed, once the characters, rescue Gundren, Rockseeker, and reclaim the lost mine for the dwarves, when they return back to town, there's some trouble a brewing, as there's been a series of break-and-enters, vandalism, thefts, all carried out by groups of goblins. And some of it is just kind of random and has no real purpose, while other parts of this are actually very much deliberate. So what's actually going on is there is a cabal of illithids or mind flayers that are worshipping this far realm entity, sort of this Lovecraftian type of cosmic horror. And they're trying to bring this cosmic horror into the material world. And the way that they're doing this, or the way that they need to do this, is to collect pieces of a shattered obelisk. Now, throughout 5th edition, in several different adventures and campaigns, there has been these obsidian or these black obelisks that really are just kind of a point of curiosity for the most part. They don't necessarily serve a story purpose within the adventures that they're written into, but they're just kind of like this anomaly or something that, once you start seeing them pop up more than once, you start to think that maybe there's something going on with them. And what's actually really cool is what the obelisks are, or at least what some of the obelisks are at the very least, is revealed in Rime of the Frostmaid. Now, I'm not going to spoil the events of that, but it was really cool to see a follow-up to the obelisk storyline, because in my group, the players discovered what the obelisk did by activating one, and I just think it's kind of cool to see them sort of continuing along with that. So you've got these mind flayers are trying to conduct this ritual, which is going to open up access to the far realm using these shards from a destroyed obelisk. And you have like the situation in Phandalin continues to get worse and worse and worse as individuals in the town, as well as just other creatures and monsters, become corrupted by the influence of the far realm and basically turn into like these horrific monsters. So you got like these mutated creatures that we have here, and the player characters themselves can also potentially become infected by the far realm and begin slowly transforming into some sort of abomination. Also, something that I find interesting, and I'm not saying this in a bad way because they own their artwork and assets, but I was actually kind of surprised to see this particular piece of artwork here, because that was the same artwork that was on the cover of the very first dungeon magazine that I ever purchased. So let me just grab that here real quick. So yeah, it was just kind of cool to see them reusing some artwork that appeared in Dungeon magazine. So instead of like just going back and reusing artwork from other of their like role-playing books, this is from Dungeon magazine. It's just kind of cool to see that. Like I said, I don't blame them at all for using their assets, and it was an awesome piece of artwork that not a lot of people necessarily were aware of. So it is really cool to see that there. But ultimately, you've got, like I said, a group of player characters that are trying to prevent this cult of mind flayers from basically unleashing Lovecraftian horrors on the prime material world. And I gotta say, I'm gonna be completely and totally honest here when it comes to my personal bias, because this adventure includes psionics, it includes tons of aberrations, it includes mind flayers. The only thing that's missing is a true beholder encounter. There is like a spectator that was part of the Lost Mine of Phandelver, and there may be another beholder-like creature in the adventure, but again, I'm not going to spoil too much there. But if it would have just had that, then this probably would have been my all-time favorite 5th edition adventure. But overall, I'm really digging what they're doing here. I love the influence of the Far Realm, the corrupting aspect of it, and seeing NPCs from Phandelver that the player characters may have developed strong attachments to through various interactions throughout the previous more normal part of the adventure, to see them slowly transform and become these almost mindless abominations is just really something. So I gotta say, I do like this book quite a bit, and I think this is one of the better adventures that we've had from 5th edition D&D. And I will, like I said, I'm completely biased in that because it involves a lot of things that I absolutely love and that don't really typically have not been a huge part of like the 5e experience. Being like psionics, Lovecraftian horror, and a strong emphasis on mind flayers. Like previous adventures have had mind flayers here and there, but these are kind of the driving force behind everything. And there are a number of different, interesting mind flare, illithid based encounters. And like I said, I am all here for it. So if you like sort of a more horror oriented campaign, with some, again, like there's a little bit of body horror stuff kind of thrown in there, with the player characters or even NPCs becoming affected by the Far Realm. If you are big into Lovecraft like I am, I'm a huge fan of that's just the Cthulhu mythos. And even though these aren't like Cthulhu mythos creatures, they're definitely inspired by them. And I think it's great. It's also really cool to see the Lost Mine of Phandelver redone, so that it is once again in print and available for people that are starting their D&D journey. Like this, I think would make a great introductory adventure for your group of players, just because again it's an absolutely fantastic adventure. It's one of my favorite 5e adventures that I've run, and it's really cool to see that it is once again available. And this isn't something new for, I know some people don't like stuff being like reprinted or re-released or things like that, but it's something that's been going on for quite a while. I do have like In Search of Adventure, which is a compilation of the first 9B or basic D&D modules. So this is something that's been going on for a while, but Lost Mine of Phandelver in particular, I think has a very special place in D&D history. Again, being a lot of people's introduction to the game. So anything that can keep that going for, let's just say you were a player back in the day when this starter set first came out and you played the Lost Mine of Phandelver and you're starting to DM now and you want to run that adventure for your group, well, unless you have that original starter set or can find one of those original starter sets, you didn't really have access to the adventure unless you went online. And I'm old school. I like physical stuff. But having it available is great. Having a follow-up adventure to take place after it is also great. And I think it would be kind of cool. I did have a group that I ran through the Lost Mine of Phandelver, and I think it'd actually be really cool to have them play those characters again, pick them back up, and then go through the rest of the more horror-oriented part of the adventure. Also, something that this book does that the starter set should have done way back when it first came out is the inclusion of a double-sided map. So here we see on one side of the map there are just the dungeon locations that players might be exploring. You have some hideouts. It's not all of them. There's still quite a few maps that are missing, but you do have some of the other ones here. And then on the flip side here, you just have a big map of the Phandelver region, something that the starter set absolutely should have had contained inside of it. It was my biggest gripe with the original starter set. So this book actually does come with that poster map 9.5 years almost later. So yeah, I recommend checking out Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. Again, keep in mind that it is the first, not necessarily half, but the first 4 chapters of the book are going to be a reprint of the original Lost Mine of Phandelver with some modifications. So if you've already run through that with your group, then you can simply skip on to chapter 5 and beyond. Or it might be chapter 6, because I think there's an introductory chapter. But it is a really cool adventure. If you're into horror stuff, if you're not into like horror or cosmic horror or body horror type of stuff, then this probably isn't going to be the adventure for you. But if that's something that you're into, something that you enjoy in your tabletop RPGs, then this is going to be a really great way to be able to experience that within the D&D 5th edition framework. So I do recommend checking this out if that sort of stuff interests you. You got psionics, you've got mind flayers, you've got cosmic horrors from beyond the veil. You have one of the preeminent 5th edition D&D adventures, one of the most iconic adventures in the modern era, and I'm completely here for it. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention the absolutely amazing game store exclusive cover. So if you have a local game store in your area, this is probably one of my favorite game store exclusive covers that's ever been created for D&D 5th edition. It, again, just very much puts me in that like Call of Cthulhu type of mood. You've got sort of, again, just the swirling, nonsensical amorphous blobs here, but you can recognize, creatures, mind flayers, the obelisk there. But you just kind of got that, like, I don't want to say cheesy, but you kind of got that, like, like C grade movie, like the title that just kind of wipes across the screen sort of thing. But it's just an awesome cover. I love the use of like the green and everything. It's just sort of an off-putting kind of design. And I think it's absolutely great. So if you have a local game store in your area and you're looking to get Phandelver and Below, this is the exclusive cover here. And it's a glossy cover. Whoops, didn't mean to bump the table there. It's a glossy cover. It's not like some of the other ones where it has sort of like a matte feel to it that rubs off and looks really bad after a while. I think this is actually going to hold up fairly well. But yeah, excellent adventure. It's great to revisit one of the classics of modern D&D. And to be able to play in that sandbox a little bit more with some of my favorite things. So let me know in the comments below. Did you pick up the Shattered Obelisk? If you did, what did your group think when they got beyond just the Lost Mine of Phandelver? Is this your introduction to the Lost Mine of Phandelver, or did you play the original starter set version of it that came out all the way back in 2014? So let me know that in the comments below. Thank you once again to Wizards of the Coast for sending this my way. I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank each and every single one of you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me. So until next time, take care.